The Invasion, which is not reviewed in the papers today because it wasn't shown to the press. So if you've read a review of it in the paper, it's either that somebody must have seen it in America or they're making it up. So it's one of these things in which you have to, rush along to the 11:40 screening at the Cineworld on whatever it is, because that's what happens when you don't show movies to the press. At least if they're worth their salt, they'll just pay and go and see them and just be in a slightly bad mood. It's the third remake of the Don Siegel original, which of course was based on a novel by Jack Finney. Jack Finney, very interestingly enough, that the original version was thought of as this classic anti-communist text. The story is, as a small town in America, the people are taken over by people from outer space who are emotionless, who are basically all working as one, and the theory was this is a great big allegory for the way in which America is being taken over by the seeping threat of communism, Reds under the bed. And Jack Finney always said, well, interesting idea, nothing to do with anything I had ever intended. Doesn't mean that it's not there. Doesn't mean that subtext isn't there in the film, but it just means that he didn't intend it. This remake itself, what?
I was just thinking, if it's his responsibility and he didn't put it in there, then it's people thinking...
Well, he didn't make the film, and he's saying that he didn't put it in the book, but just because you didn't put something in on purpose doesn't mean it's not there. Trust the tale, not the teller. Absolutely. Just because somebody says something isn't in there and they made it doesn't mean it's not.
I trust you, you're a doctor.
Yeah, but you have to. It's absolutely true. You cannot always go back to the artist and say, well, tell me what that is, and they'll tell you what it is, because a lot of the time they don't know what it is that they've done. I mean, that seems to be self-evident, doesn't it? Fine.
Indubitably.
Okay, so this is the third remake.
I do quite like to trust the teller.
Really?
Yes.
That's very... death of the author. Where have you been?
Oh, just knocking around a bit.
There's a line in this new version in which Nicole Kidman is discussing the way that society has moved on. She's talking to a Russian who says that we haven't moved on at all and everyone's bestial and evil and bad. And she says, yes, well, things are getting better because, look at me, I'm a postmodern feminist. And I think, no, you're not. You're Nicole Kidman. But let's not even go there. This film is now hitting the cinemas. It was actually made a couple of years ago. Daniel Craig, who co-stars with Nicole Kidman, got the Bond role whilst he was making this the first time round. That's how long ago the original version of it was made. So the story is threat from outer space, space shuttle breaks up, invasion in the form of ooky, uggy, gooey stuff that is going to turn us all into pod people. Let's hear a clip.
50 scientists have resigned over the shuttle department.
Good morning, Ben.
50. They've all signed a letter saying the government's ignoring their findings because they think the shuttle crashed on purpose. I mean, no one's reporting it here. I mean, I had to find it on the World Service. What's wrong with you?
Tucker takes off to Atlanta for 4 years, Ben. He calls Ollie on his birthday and at Christmas, and suddenly he comes back into his life and he wants to be a good father. No. It's confusing for Ollie.
He's his dad.
I know him, and I don't trust him.
Look, Oliver loves you more than anything else on earth, and there is nothing that Tucker or anybody else can do to change that.
Future Bond, Daniel Craig, and post-modern feminist Nicole Kidman. Now, when they originally made this, it was directed by the remake, this story was Oliver Hirschbiegel, the guy who made Downfall. And as far as I understand, it's a very complicated story. They've finished the original shooting in 2006, and Daniel Craig went off to go and do the James Bond film. And then it was looked at by Joel Silver, and they went, no, we don't like this. It's not the film that we want. And the film that it seemed to be at that point was, I suppose, claustrophobic, intimate drama to some extent, although it's really hard to tell from the finished thing. Anyway, what they then did was they got the Wachowskis, the Matrix guys in, to do rewrites, and they got in the guy who directed V for Vendetta to do reshoots, massive reshoots. And during the reshoots there was, and people will remember this, there was an event in which Nicole Kidman was involved in a car crash on the set, which enables everybody to make the joke about it's a car crash of a movie, and boy, is it a car crash of a movie. You do literally sit there, it's like flicking channels. There's two films going on, at least two films, and they're not talking to each other, and there's bad haircut continuity, and it looks like a film that's been made twice, neither of them particularly well. When you had the original version, the sequel, there is a whole bunch of subtextual stuff in there, regardless of what the author of the story says. It's about kind of creeping American paranoia. Then you have the Kaufman version in the 70s, which I like very much, which is the one which introduces the scream. When the pod people point at each other and they scream. You've seen the Kaufman version.
Isn't that how it finishes? It finishes on
exactly.
the screen.
And it's marvellous. It's a great moment. It also has some
very scary.
Very scary. It has some great special effects in it. It has that moment when you get the dog with the with the head and everything. And it's done very well. It's weird. It's very, very peculiar. And that shrieking is really well done. Then you get the Ferrara version, version, the Abel Ferrara version, he who made Driller Killer and Bad Lieutenant, and his version's from the 90s and was originally called Invasion of the Body Snatchers. By the time it came out, it was just called Body Snatchers, and it's really pared down, and it's set on largely around an army base, and it's very peculiar because it's a short film and it went straight to video over here, but it has some ambition, but it takes the scream from the Kaufman version. The thing that we get that's new in this one is that most of the infection is done by green puke, that people puke at each other in a sort of exorcist way, and it's set in Washington, so there's kind of, I suppose there's a movie reason for there being some green spew, but outside of that, and there's a lot of nods towards current politics. Like, the whole thesis of the movie is, look, people do bad things, they invade countries, they have wars. If we could all just become pod people, we'd all stop doing it. And as the pod person stuff happens, if we could all become Al Gore, for example, we could all just
hold hands and buy the world a Coke.
Boring for all eternity. In fact, that's what it is. Al Gore's a pod person. It's just come to me. That's exactly what the problem is.
You make it sound like a New Seekers commercial. Do you remember them?
I'd like to teach the world to sing. I'd like to buy the world a Coke.